360 on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines coming this hour. Germany hosts US and Ukrainian delegations this weekend for talks on a ceasefire in Ukraine ahead of a Berlin summit with European leaders. Washington says President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff is attending, signaling US hopes for progress after nearly 4 years of war. Belarus frees 123 prisoners, including opposition figure Maria Kolesnikova and laureate prize winner Batyalatsky after talks with the US envoy. The move follows Washington's decision to lift sanctions on Belarusian potash as both sides signal steps towards normalizing relations. US lawmakers released new photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, showing President Donald Trump as a broader disclosure of the files nears. Trump says the images are not significant, adding Epstein was a well-known figure photographed with many public figures. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Rwanda has clearly violated a peace agreement after Rwandan-backed forces advanced in eastern DR Congo. Rubio says Washington will take action to ensure commitments made under President Trump's brokered peace accord. Syrian state media says US and Syrian soldiers are wounded after shots are fired at a joint military delegation in Palmyra. Officials say the attack occurred during a joint patrol and the shooter is killed. The US Veterans Affairs Department plans to eliminate up to 35,000 healthcare positions this month, mostly vacant roles, according to a media report. The move could cut the workforce by around 10% as the agency seeks to reduce staffing levels. California sues the Trump administration over the withholding of more than $33 million in federal transport funding. The state says the grants are cut after federal officials ruled California failed to enforce English proficiency requirements for truck drivers. Thailand's leader says the country will continue military operations along its disputed border with Cambodia, hours after US President Donald Trump said he had brokered a ceasefire. Thailand's caretaker Prime Minister says there's no ceasefire as fighter jets strike targets and both Bangkok and Phnom Penh make no mention of any agreement. We start this hour in Europe, and Germany will host US and Ukrainian delegations for talks on a potential ceasefire in Ukraine ahead of a summit in Berlin with European leaders and President Volodymyr Zelensky. A US official confirmed that President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, along with Jared Kushner, traveled to Germany to engage with Ukrainian and European representatives. Witkoff has previously led negotiations involving US, Ukraine and Russia. According to reports, discussions aim to explore progress towards a possible ceasefire, signaling Washington's interest in advancing peace talks. Britain, France and Germany have been refining US peace proposals, which reportedly include territorial concessions, limits on Ukraine's armed forces and restrictions on NATO aspirations, as Kiev faces mounting international pressure to consider the plan. Joining us now is Raymond Vickery. He's an international affairs expert and former US Assistant of Commerce. Thank you. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Raymond, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. What are your thoughts going into these talks, Raymond? Of course, the original plan came up a couple of weeks ago now, and it was thought to very much favour Moscow. Now the Ukrainians have looked at it, the Europeans have looked at it. Do you think there's any positive vision going into these talks with Witkoff, European officials and Ukrainian officials in Berlin?
Well, Thomas, thanks for having me and allowing me to comment on this. You know, in order to wage peace like you wage war, you have to have a strategy, you have to have partners, and you have to have principles upon which you're waging it. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has had none of these. It's looked at it as a real estate transaction deal in which two sides get together and one side wins and comes out as a great person, namely President Trump, and then you go on to the next transaction. Of course, that's not the way in which international affairs work. And I believe what is going on with this Berlin meeting is a realization on the part of the Trump administration that they really don't have partners, that they've tried to go it alone. And the Germans, the French, the British have all stood by Zelensky and Ukraine to a greater degree than has the administration. So it seems to me this Berlin meeting is a belated attempt to try to fill the gap in terms of having some partners in regard to the resolution of this terrible invasion and conflict brought on by Russia in a full-scale manner in 2022. It is to be welcomed because even if it's belated, it does reflect a realization that in order to bring peace, you're going to have to involve the European partners. And for its part, Ukraine, of course, has looked to Germany, France, its European neighbors to try to fill a gap in the strategy, partners, and principles that are needed to bring peace in Ukraine.
Yes, and this comes just a couple of days, Raymond, after the United States released its national security strategy, a 30-page document which no longer labels Russia as a national threat and also talks and slams Europe as a continent, as a society. Your thoughts on the timing of this document's release and what it means in practice when it comes to these negotiations?
Well, I think that what you saw with this national security document was really a reflection of the Vice President J.D. Vance and President Trump approach to Europe. Basically, the MAGA movement, the Trump-Vance administration, is a throwback to the original America First, which took place back in the 20s and 30s, which was designed really to keep the U.S. out of Europe and to keep the United States as some sort of fortress surrounded by water. The national security document is completely contrary to the principle of being able to have partners to bring peace. And this Berlin meeting really is a unacknowledged move, really contrary to what the national security strategy document is, which is a completely political document, not based upon the reality of power and interest of the United States. So yes, I think that you're quite right to bring this up, because basically what that document does is throw Europe under the bus and say, well, we're going to move forward and we're going to support right-wing parties in Europe. That is not the way forward. And the way forward is a concerted partnership for peace and democracy and Western values that have been foremost in U.S. policy since World War II. So this Berlin meeting goes the other way, but you can bet that the reception in Berlin is going to be cool to the United States in view of that document.
Yeah, and Raymond, there are two men that are going to be centre to these talks to the United States, for the United States. Steve Witkoff leading the talks, and of course Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is involved. What does this say, given that these two men brokered the extremely fragile Gaza peace deal, about how President Trump is running his foreign policy here?
Well, he's running it the same way he ran his real estate empire, and that is to get people who are experienced in real estate deals in transactional approach rather than relationship approaches. These two gentlemen have really little or no background in terms of international affairs. Particularly, Mr. Witkoff had none. Mr. Kushner had only that which he had gained by being the president's son-in-law during Trump 1.0. So this shows, it seems to me, really a lack of appreciation for the realities of how you bring a lasting peace based upon principle to the world. That requires a strategy which is foreign to real estate and commercial transactions, which basically are let's get this deal, let's win this deal, and the relationship really doesn't matter because you're going to move on to something else. In international affairs, economic matters, security matters, the strategic approach are all connected. And it cannot be the case that you get two people in a room and you make a deal and that solves a problem. And you're seeing this not only in regard to Ukraine, but you see it in the so-called peace deal in Rwanda. You see it in Thailand. And basically you see it in Gaza as well, even though we've had some ceasefire there. The reality is we do not have any long-term peace approach, and that is directly traceable to the fact that you use people like Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner rather than people who have some experience in international affairs and take a longer strategic view of how we build peace and prosperity in the world.
Yes, Raymond, it's fascinating stuff. Do stay with us as we move on to further US foreign policy for our next story. And the United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said that Rwanda has clearly violated a peace agreement signed with US President Donald Trump and has vowed unspecified action in response after Rwandan-backed forces advanced in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. At the United Nations, the US accused Rwanda of fueling instability and war as a Rwanda-backed advance of the M23 rebel group in eastern DRC threatens to derail US efforts to broker peace in the region. The leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda signed a peace deal in Washington on December the 4th of this year, even as fighting continued in the war-scarred region. Raymond joins us once again. Raymond, as we've said previously, of course, Donald Trump claims to have ended 10 wars. The Thai-Cambodia conflict, which rages on, is supposed to be one of them, along with the Gaza ceasefire, which has seen just in the last couple of hours 3 people killed in the Gaza Strip. India, Pakistan. India claims that Donald Trump didn't have anything to do with that. DRC, Rwanda, another one. We're seeing gaps appear in these peace agreements.
I'm in.
What are your thoughts on this latest escalation in this African conflict that Donald Trump claimed to have ended?
I think, and thanks for allowing me to comment on this, you know, you have to say, sure, it's laudable that President Trump wants to be known as a peacemaker. But his view in terms of how he is recognized as such is to have sort of a public relations political campaign to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And so instead of formulating a strategy, having partners, having principles in regard to each of these conflicts, and seeing what can be done in the long run, He wants to claim that he has solved these problems. Therefore, strike up the band and bring him to Oslo and hand him the Nobel Peace Prize. And then he will once again say, as he used to do in reality TV, the rest of you are fired, and I'm the great man. This is not the way to run an international affairs strategy and program for the United States. And if you look, as you have said, at the claims, they're like claims that he's made in so many areas of having solved problems when really what he's done is pulled people together for a photo op and being able to say, yes, I marked that one up for me and me alone. That is not working in Rwanda, Congo. You not only have to have a meeting at the White House and people shaking hands, you have to have a longer term facility framework in order to be able to solve a problem. Same thing in Cambodia, Thailand, and you've mentioned the India-Pakistan situation, which is perhaps the most egregious example of claiming credit where no credit is due. And it is particularly egregious because he has allowed himself and the United States to side with one side, namely Pakistan, against a democratic partner, India, in claiming a credit. And then, of course, you throw in other interests, which he has personally, and in deals. And that seems to be the modus operandi in regard to Congo and Rwanda. Apparently, he has dreams of involvement in the minerals and basic trade there, and will claim to have some economic benefit, which is perhaps, nobody knows because it's not transparent, as to his own economic benefit. So this is, it's regrettable. One has to say, yes, it's good that you're striving for peace rather than more war, but you need the strategy, you need the partners, and you need principles for the long run.
Raymond Vickery, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much in taking the time and joining us here on NewsX World. We now move on and into the United States, where in a latest development from the Jeffrey Epstein case, congressional Democrats from the House Oversight Panel have released a set of brand new images. These images have been reportedly confiscated from the estate of the late convicted sex offender as part of an ongoing investigation. Out of the 19 images released, 3 feature US President Donald Trump, once again raising questions at the close relations between Trump and Epstein. Moreover, the House Oversight Committee says that they are also reviewing more than 95,000 images to gather more details around the case. Let's listen in to what the US President said in response to the images released.
I haven't seen it, but I mean, everybody knew this man. He was all over Palm Beach. He has photos with everybody. I mean, almost, there are hundreds and hundreds of people that have photos with him. So that's no big deal. I know nothing.
Joining us now is Matthew Verdum, an American journalist and author, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. We've just heard the US President's response, the same as previous. Donald Trump says, Jeffrey Epstein was a member of Palm Beach. Donald Trump also, of course, has Mar-a-Lago in the same area. Do you think that the American public believe Donald Trump when it comes to these allegations, and especially when they see images like this come out of the US House Democrats Committee?
Right. Well, the new images prove nothing. It's just, photos of Donald Trump with women with their eyes, blacked out with little graphic boxes. So it doesn't prove anything, but the continued drumbeat, the continued um, release of photos like this serves to make the American people skeptical of Donald Trump. Most people won't actually read an article when it screams, in large font that, here are more pictures of Donald Trump with unidentified women at Epstein parties. It makes them think that Trump was closer to Epstein than he really was. And I think that's the purpose of the release of these photos. I think people are skeptical, even though there is no evidence tying President Trump at any time to Jeffrey Epstein's wrongdoing. In fact, when like more than 20 years ago, when President Trump learned about the shadiness, sleazy and potentially illegal activities of Epstein at that time, he distanced himself and banned Epstein from his estate at Mar-a-Lago. But the continued discussion of Trump, keeping him in the headlines and maintaining this never-ending drum beat of Trump and Epstein, Trump and Epstein, Trump and Epstein, makes people think maybe Trump was more involved with Epstein than he says. So, and I think as I said, the purpose of releasing all these photos is to make Trump look bad, and people. I think it is having that effect because people are skeptical of what Trump says about his past relationship with Epstein.
As you've said, indeed, these photos are not incriminating in any sort of way. However, it does keep the conversation going, of course. Donald Trump previously said they had a falling out long time ago, saying that he hadn't spoken to Epstein for probably 15 years or more. That would put their contact at an end of around 2004 or earlier. However, some emails recently released by that same committee, 20,000 emails, have a few mentions of the US president in. From 2011, Epstein wrote to Ghislaine Maxwell, said that Donald Trump had spent hours at his house. He also called Trump the dog that hadn't barked. Vague but suspicious messaging there. Leading up to this release of the Epstein files, which has to be done within 30 days from when that act passed Congress. What do you think is going, that the American public is going to, how do you think it's going to act? And of course, you have redactions in these images as well. What are the kind of rules, etc., over redactions when it would come to the big release of these 40,000 images that the US DOJ said to hold?
I thought that the rules over redactions pertain to people who are clearly innocent, that don't have anything to do with Epstein's crimes. I'm not sure that they govern the photos, such as the ones we were just discussing of Donald Trump with young women, where they blacked out their eyes and their eye sockets. I think that the rules are that the Attorney General has, Pam Bondi has the legal right to withhold things that could affect, I think, the usual sort of requirement, redaction rules, that ongoing investigations cannot be exposed, and people who clearly have nothing to do with the controversy can't necessarily be mentioned. But I think that the Attorney General has a great deal of discretion in terms of what she can release. So you might find less material is actually going to be released than a lot of people are hoping for.
Yes, Matthew Vidham, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of the United States. Now, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has freed 123 prisoners, including Nobel Peace Prize laureate Ales Bialyatsky, after 2 days of talks with US envoy John Cole. Meanwhile, US Embassy in Lithuania has said that other prisoners are being sent from Belarus to Ukraine. The United States has said that it will continue the diplomatic efforts to free the remaining political prisoners in Belarus. While speaking on the ties between the two, US Vilnius Embassy has said that the United States stands ready for additional engagement with Belarus that advances US interests. This comes as the United States is lifting sanctions on Belarusian potash as the two strengthen diplomatic ties. Belarusian state media has said that the US envoy in Belarus, that as relations normalize, more sanctions will be lifted. Okay, we're now joined by Matthew Vadum. He is an American journalist once again. Matthew, of course, this is a very recent tie normalizing between Belarus and the United States. Why is the US doing this now?
The U.S. is warming up to Belarus, which is a horrible, brutal, backwards country, a vicious dictatorship, only because it wants to weaken Russia in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. They want to peel away, the United States wants to peel away a steadfast ally of Russia that is more or less, mindlessly obedient to Putin's dictates, and they think that they can do that by rescinding the restrictions on the purchase of potash, a product, a mineral that Belarus produces a lot of. So this is the United States, the Trump administration is warming up to Belarus in order to weaken Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war effort. I don't think it's because the United States has any particular fondness for Belarus or for the dictator who runs it.
Yes, Matthew Vadum, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It was a pleasure to have you on the programme. We now move on, and Attorney General Rob Bonta has announced that California, along with 19 other states, are suing the Trump administration over its new H-1B visa policy. The lawsuit challenges the administration's plan to raise fees on new H-1B visa petitions to $100,000. The administration has argued that the increase ensures the program brings in high-skilled talent that cannot be replaced by American workers, claiming the H-1B visa program has been misused to hire lower-paid, lower-skilled foreign labour. Bonta countered that President Trump lacks authority to impose such a fee, highlighting adverse effects on US industries, including education and healthcare. Experts warn the new fees could impact major technology companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. The H-1B visa allows US employees to hire highly skilled foreign workers in specialized fields such as technology, engineering, and healthcare. And that's all that we have time for this hour. Stay tuned on NewsX World for more international updates.